The National Assembly management has said the allowance of 2 million naira sent into the accounts of each senator is part of the statutory allowance for the running of their offices, already captured in the 2023 budget. Senate President Godswill Akpabio, who was seen on live TV informing his colleagues that a clerk had sent some, quote, token into their accounts for their, quote, holiday enjoyment, had also made explanations in this regard. In a statement, the National Assembly management says it's compelled to provide the explanation and clear what it calls persistent mischaracterization and misunderstanding that have greeted news of the disbursement. It says the money is entitlement of the lawmakers to run their offices and not as largesse to them.
Well, we have public policy analyst Chibuzor Okereke joining us now in the studio to look at all of this. It's so good to see you on Newsnight. You already have a grin on your face. I wonder what that already says in itself. First off, this enjoyment or holiday money paid to the National Assembly. Well, the National Assembly says, look, what's the hula baloo about all of that? It's already, statutorily provided for the National Assembly. So why all the noise about it? What's wrong with it? What's your take on it, first off?
I think that the rightful office provided explanation. The President of the Senate is not the Chief Accounting Officer of neither the Senate nor the National Assembly. He's the clerk to the National Assembly. And I can say that this 10th Assembly is assembly in transition. Obviously, the Senate President may not have probably recounted, that particular statement because it's not within his office. But maybe having worked for 6 consecutive legislative days, confirming ministers from morning to evening, and having announced about 74 committees, standing committees of the Senate into the night, almost 11 p.m., and they were going to adjourn on the day. As somebody who is in his usual self, likes to get along with people, decided to make that statement. So if it were maybe another person who is not a presiding officer, I'm sure many senators will raise a very point of privilege that may commit to the ethics committee. But it's difficult when the presiding officer himself is the one. But I think with the explanation the National Assembly management had given, whose responsibility it is to manage senators' welfare in terms of financial allowances and all that, as the Chief Accounting Officer, I think that should be, taken. But of course, many senators, as you know, are not happy because it has a lot of implications. Most of them were just elected. They are receiving calls from the constituent for all kinds of things. So if you come on air and say they already have 2 million, you know the kind of pressure. And of course, the economic condition of Nigerians at the time.
Well, coming there, because probity is one thing, transparency and accountability are two other things. But then 13 million naira running cost for a senator, running into 52 million naira in a year. At this time when Nigerians are hungry and the economy is biting harder by the day, 2 million naira for holiday. Is that part of the 52 million naira annual running cost?
Well, I'm not able to confirm 13 million or 52 million. What I can confirm from this statement is that 2 million, the management has said, is part of the allowances for running office for somebody who is going out for 2 months, nearly 2 months. But again, that also leads us to important question about open National Assembly, transparency and accountability. Nigerians want to know how the National Assembly finances are being managed. I recall the former president of the Senate saying that the National Assembly is a toothless bulldog. It has no money. It receives less than 2% of the national budget, while the executive controls 98%. So the National Assembly has the responsibility to do well, to open up its books so that people are able to, justify, and understand how that particular institution is being managed. Yeah.
Before now, there's been this no love lost situation or relationship, if you like, between the Nigerian, citizenry and the legislature. They've always seen the legislature as a house of sleaze, for want of a better word. How can this 10th Assembly regain the trust of Nigerians that indeed, if we have to suffer, if we have to make sacrifices, the legislature will be, leading the charge?
Yeah, I think it's about legislative assertiveness. You see, the National Assembly has been given the power under the law they have the power of the purse to appropriate. So, and the national budget is one of the most important policy documents the National Assembly is predated over, every year. So what happens is that what kind of items, what kind of projects, what kind of things are appropriated and budgeted in the national budget. So that is one way the people, can, rely on the National Assembly and the work they do. Another one is oversight. You could see it in the House of Rep, for instance, the probe on job racketeering with the Federal Character Commission that is going on, and how a lot of Nigerians are denied opportunity to, compete with their, fellow citizens in getting job in government agencies. So in fact, Afrobarometer report released, I think, 2022, puts perception corruption in the National Assembly as second most corrupt institution in the country. So, and to change that, I think the 10th Assembly has the responsibility to conduct open NAS policy. The National Assembly should be open and accessible to the people. Its activities, laws, legislation, oversight, motion should be people-oriented. And most importantly, like I said, the piece of legislation, which is the national budget that happens every year, must reflect the kind of projects and opportunities that Nigerians need. If that happens, then the people can say this National Assembly is representing the people of Nigeria. But we must not forget also political reality. In the issue of political reality, the people have to understand the constitutional mandate of the National Assembly. That will help for them to be able to rate them, to grade them, and put up a standard scorecard to say this assembly is representing us or otherwise. But again, the assembly is also made up of parties who have other interests they will continue to push.
Chibuzor, now this is not rocket science.
Yeah.
We all know what's going on. It's quite simple. Nigerians believe that the senators and the reps, the House of Reps members, are earning too much money while the masses are suffering. They want a cut in cost of governance, and they want it to start with their leaders and representatives. So how can they push for that reality? Or is it a foregone alternative?
Well, you see, there's an argument on the table that the budget of the National Assembly is less than 2% of national budget. And I'm as a practitioner and somebody who is a professional in legislature and governance issues, I can tell you, and I've argued this, probably members of the National Assembly could have money, but the institution itself doesn't have that money, and that is what needs to change, right? So if you look at, if they say less than 2% of our national budget goes to the National Assembly, then you have the senators and the House of Representative members, you have the National Assembly management, you have the NILS, the institute, the NILS is there, National Assembly Budget Office, and then you have all these groups. What National Assembly needs to do is to prove to Nigerians that these perceptions, these assumptions are not, true, and sit back with the executive and balance. For Christ's sake, if we don't invest in that institution massively, we are going to undermine the character of oversight, and it will not produce results, because the executive agencies will continue to lord itself over, most of the National Assembly activities. And we should be worried, because reports have shown that most committees in National Assembly are even supported by agencies to do their oversight work. And what do you do if somebody from the executive arm is the one, financing your oversight? What kind of oversight are you going to produce? So it should be an ongoing conversation, a national dialogue on how we can ensure. Because if you don't empower the National Assembly, then governance will suffer.
Right, very quickly before we let you go, let's get your assessment of the screening of the ministerial nominees by this 10th National Assembly. Was it satisfactory enough? Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a mixed basket. The screening exercise is a political activity. It ought to have a blend of professional, activity. There are a number of people that also, made a difference, like the minority caucus.
I do get your point. Sorry, I mean, Nigerians had a lot of reservations about the whole bow and go. As far as they're concerned, the Senate did not, scrutinize.
That is the challenge you get when you adopt the plenary approach. There are different approaches to screening ministerial nominees. In most democracies of the world, it is a special committee that does that, and enough time is allocated for each nominee. Right. And again, in Nigeria, we don't have portfolios of nominees, but you could see a number of times questions were asked, and then so these parties are there. There's a ruling party who has sent these nominees. The ruling party produces the leadership of the Senate, and you see some questions came up, and then the leader will move to step those questions down.
Right.
But if you look at the overall assessment, you could see that it follows the rules, the standing orders of the Senate, and the Constitution, because the National Assembly is also limited. Section 147(6) or so gives them only 21 days to screen 48 people. So I think these are things that should change. Each nominee should not get less than 3 to 4 hours. And that we allow and it should come with the portfolio, so that people can prepare and tell their questions. But one that stood out was that of the minority whip with Festus Kayamo said, because it's important for responsibility accounting. That is how you assert legislative powers and get the institution to be respected by the executive. Yeah.
Chibuzor Okereke, thank you very much indeed. Public policy analyst, thank you for coming on Newsnight.